Honour be on each beinn for Beinn Dòrain. Of all I've seen beneath the sun, the most glorious. Welcome back. In this episode we head to Bridge of Orchy to climb the spectacular Beinn Dòrain and its rugged neighbour, Beinn Dòrain. Wax lyrical with its most famous denizen, Duncan Ban MacIntyre. Look at the physics of wind chill and explore the treasures of the peat bogs on wild Rannoch Moor. If you find yourself enjoying the show, hitting like and subscribing really helps the channel to grow and to create more free content like this for you to enjoy. Beinn Dòrain is a 1076 metre Munro at the northern limit of the Southern Highlands, forming with its neighbours a great L-shaped wall between the Southeast Highlands and the vast expanse of Rannoch Moor. This wall of Rannoch once formed the border between the ancient Pictish kingdom of Alba and the Celtic Scots of Dalriada. Forming its southern rampart is Beinn Dòrain, an impossibly majestic, sweeping brushstroke of stone rising from the landscape with the dramatic peaks of the Central Highlands behind. It's a hill you'll no doubt have marvelled at if you've ever driven north from Tyndrum or done the West Highland Way, which we cross on the route today. The terrain of the Bridge of Orchy Hills is noticeably rockier, wilder and more rugged than a lot of the Southern Highlands, and while they're technically still in the Southern Highlands, these are more akin to the Central and Western Munros in their composition, character and, in winter, severity. Beinn Dòrain is invariably climbed from Bridge of Orchy via the steep-walled Curan Dòi, then following the ridge southward to the summit. Once past the lower north top, the ridge narrows to the true summit, around 100 metres beyond. Beinn Dòrain is a 1004 metre Munro overlooking the vast plain of Rannoch Moor. Sharing the same approach route as Beinn Dòrain, these two are sometimes known as the twins of Orchy, despite being completely different shapes. Beinn Dòrain is as you can see, the path makes its way up past this rock step here, then up onto a concave terrace with a steep finish onto the Bealach.
This path is extremely slippery, very icy. It seems as if a stream is just frozen in place on it. I've just seen someone go up the top of this, so I'm going to follow them up. It's about an hour in. The Bridge of Orchy down there.
In conditions like these, you'll want to put your crampons on around about here. Beinn Dòrain isn't the most welcoming of corries. It's very steep, and the formidable rock faces on either side give it a surprisingly alpine feel in winter. Well, here we are at the cairn marking the Bealach. And look at that! Ethereal morning light on the slopes of Ben Vanach, with the north buttresses of Niall Gardaí and Glen Lyon beyond, and Loch Lyon in between. Magnificent. The route up to the North Ridge is an obvious path in summer, however, it's far from apparent when snow covers the trail. If you can see it, head for the top of this broad gully. From there, the ridge will lead you to the summit. When you look at a detailed weather forecast, you'll often find the air temperature prediction is accompanied by another figure labelled feels like, or the real feel if you live in America, which may be higher or lower than the actual temperature of the air. For the purposes of clarity, we'll call this second figure the apparent temperature. This isn't referring to some psychosomatic effect, it's the temperature you're likely to actually encounter in reality. We know this because standing in the wind makes us feel colder than if we're standing out of the wind. Yet despite what we feel as increased heat or cold, the average temperature of the air doesn't change. But if it's not some kind of psychological effect, how can we feel the air to be warmer or colder than it actually is? It all comes down to the speed at which the air is moving in relation to us. If warm air is still or moving slowly, the humidity level is likely to rise and we may feel the temperature to be warmer than it actually is, because, among other reasons, these conditions inhibit the body's ability to perspire. If the warm air moves quickly, this effect is reduced, as anyone who's slogged up a Munro in high summer and felt the relief of a fresh breeze will know. If cold air is still or moving slowly, we won't experience much difference in apparent temperature. If cold air is moving quickly, however, that's when we encounter what is known as the wind chill factor. When the body is exposed to cold air, the laws of thermodynamics force it to radiate its internal heat to the surrounding environment until both air and body are at a roughly equal temperature, an outcome that, in Scotland at least, isn't going to be terribly good for your health. When cold air is at rest or in low wind, this process is slower because it takes a certain amount of time for the air around your exposed skin to become saturated with the warmth that it's drained from your body, and if the sun is out, or if you're moving around a lot, this heat can balance the deficit. But in high wind, that is when the air is moving extremely fast in relation to you, the air above your exposed skin can never saturate with heat because it is constantly being replaced with fresher, colder air. When it's windy, that still patch of air that gradually warmed around you is already half a mile away and being replaced every split second with colder air, siphoning off your heat in an insatiable torrent as the cooling effect goes into overdrive. Regularly checking and learning to interpret the weather forecast is the most basic responsibility in setting out to climb the hills, because despite those funny memes, there is such thing as bad weather, and when you're caught out, it's unlikely the MRT that has to recover you will be in the mood for jokes. For detailed forecasts by area, check out the Mountain Weather Information Service, and for mountain-specific data, the Met Office and mobile app offer surprisingly good recognition of those crazy Munro names.
Well, we're on the final pull now up to the summit there behind me. Making fairly good time. It's about 2 hours and 3/4 we've been on the hill. Lovely snow conditions, as you can see. The summit is getting a bit hazy.
The north top of Beinn Dòrain bears a cairn befitting a Munro's summit, and in low visibility does a very good job of pretending it is the summit. Another elaborate cairn marks a sheer drop to the west because, why not, I guess. Those paying attention to their map, however, will realise that in fact the true summit lies over an adjoining saddle to the south. Carn Sassenach means Southerner's Cairn, a derogatory reference to the navigation skills of those from south of the Highlands, which I'll try not to take too much offence at. Fun fact, contrary to popular belief, Sassenach doesn't necessarily mean English. Anyone originating out with the Highland boundary was fair game for this descriptor. To the original inhabitants of the Scottish Highlands, the Central Belt and the borders were for all intents and purposes a different country, a perception reinforced by the numerous English invasions of the area and the growing, more pervasive influence of English capital in southern Scotland. It's only really when you're at the top that you begin to get a real feel of the exposure of the top ridge of this mountain, which is quite obvious from the south, not so much from the west where we've come up. But yeah, this ridge does get quite narrow here.
Oh no, mate! I've got lost. I don't know where the summit is. I don't know if it's back there or if it's up there. Oh no, cool, blimey, mate! I'm screwed. Let's see. What's up?
Guess I'm not full Sassenach. That looks like the real summit. We're getting a gorgeous backdrop there, hazy sun. Now, from a cloudless summit, you'll be rewarded with a view south to the Crianlarich Hills and the Mamlorns to the southeast. Today, however, we've got this, so we could be anywhere. We could be on Arthur's Seat in Edinburgh, unfortunately. But we've nevertheless completed Beinn Dòrain, currently at 1,076 metres above sea level. Like my hat, this cairn is frozen stiff, so I won't bother adding any stones to it. Quick, get the camera out. There's a break in the clouds. Over there we can see the two lairds of Mamlorn, Craig Vor and Ben Hisgarnich of Glenlochy. Duncan Ban MacIntyre is regarded as one of the greatest Gaelic poets, and was at the forefront of the golden age of Scottish Gaelic poetry in the 18th century. Inspired by the grand scenery of Glenorchy, his unsentimental yet enchanting prose proved immensely popular, and Fair Duncan quickly became a folk hero. He's best known for the epic Mole Beinn Dòrain, or Praise of Beinn Dòrain, a celebration of the iconic mountain on which he lived and worked. Praise over all to Beinn Dòrain. She rises beneath the radiant beams of the sun, in all the magnificent range of the mountains around. So shapely, so sheer are her slopes, there are none to compare. One of Glenorchy's most famous sons, MacIntyre was born in the now ruined township of Drumleachart on the shores of Loch Dubh. There was no school in the local area, so Duncan Ban was illiterate and remained so for the rest of his life. As a young man, MacIntyre worked as a forester for the Earl of Breadalbane, then later for the Duke of Argyll, on their deer forests in the Mamlorns and Glenorchy, and resided for many years at Aes Ant Sean, in the Oak Glen on the eastern side of Beinn Dòrain. At this time, being a forester had nothing to do with trees. Despite their misleading name, deer forests are just designated areas of mountainside where deer are hunted by landowners and their rich chums. He went on to work in various occupations, including as a soldier in the Argyll Regiment of Militia and later as a constable of Edinburgh City Guard. His military service for the Argyll Regiment came about when he was asked to substitute for an ageing lord of the Fletcher clan at the Battle of Falkirk during the Jacobite Rising of 1745. However, this wasn't by choice. He was employed by the Duke of Argyll, of the staunchly loyalist Clan Campbell. MacIntyre had no taste for violence and famously threw down his sword rather than continue. The only problem was it wasn't his sword, and Fletcher was none too pleased. MacIntyre at least saw the funny side. When they mustered in their hundreds, that day on the moor of Falkirk, the English speakers were defeated. It was they who had to flee. Albeit at that time I lost the chief of Clan Fletcher's sword. That broken-edged sword of misfortune, 'twas really like a girdle stick. Small its worth, for it had buckled. 'Twas the most useless implement. Afterwards, when I came home, and approached Archibald of Cranach, there he was, as ferocious as a grey, lair-haunting badger. He was sorry in that hour that he had no brand to draw. Great the privation, this loss of his grandfather's ancestral sword. Oops. Despite his brief service with the Loyalist forces, he was inherently opposed to the sweeping transformation of rural Highland culture and the decimation of the traditional clan system by English and Scottish lowland elites. He displayed clear Jacobite sympathies in some of his works, notably his Oran dos Vrichs, or Ode to Trousers, inspired by the Disarming Act of 1746, which saw the outlawing of traditional Highland dress, music and weaponry following the Battle of Culloden. Despite the social and political upheavals that racked Scotland during his lifetime, it was MacIntyre's experience as a gamekeeper in the employ of the Earl of Breadalbane which had greatest impact upon his poetry. The aforementioned Mole Beinn Dòrain stems from this period. Although he was illiterate, MacIntyre's songs and poems, especially his celebrations of his native hills and their wildlife, brought him widespread honour and fame. Unable to write his poetry down, he kept his work by memory and received help from the Minister of Lismore, Donald MacNicoll, with transcriptions. MacIntyre moved to Roxburgh Close in Edinburgh in 1767, serving with the Edinburgh City Guard, while his wife ran a pub in the Lawn Market. It was upon coming to Edinburgh that he had published 3 editions of his poems as Oran Gaelach, or Gaelic songs, in 1768, 1790 and 1804, assisted in the transcriptions by Reverend John Stewart. With MacIntyre's native tongue being a predominantly spoken rather than a written language, at this time clergymen were among the few with the ability to read and write fluently in Gaelic. Each of these editions were funded by subscription, and MacIntyre travelled across Scotland to persuade potential readers to sign up, a scheme that saw considerable success. The poetry of Duncan Ban MacIntyre would later be translated into English by such notable literary figures as Hugh MacDiarmid, Derek Thompson and Ian Crichton Smith. She is fair in the light, like the flight of the deer, in the hunt across moors on the run, or under the green leafy branches of trees in the groves, of the woods where the thick grass grows, and the curious deer, watchful and tentative, hesitant, sensitive. I've had all these clear in my sight. Says Ian Crichton Smith, the poem has a happy and sunny atmosphere, and there's no doubt that this period was the most joyful and creative of Duncan Ban's life. Unlike Wordsworth, he does not philosophise about nature, nor does he sentimentalise the deer. MacIntyre may have been unsentimental regarding the nature of his job, but there is deep sentiment and a sadness hidden in the sunny prose of Mole Beinn Dòrain that becomes apparent when seen in the historical context of its later publication. MacIntyre is paying tribute to the mountain and its denizens in this way because he knows its days are numbered. He sees the great changes the Highland clearances are bringing to his beloved landscape and its cultural traditions, and feels a great melancholy that powers his effusiveness for the land of his youth. Thus the poem is both uplifting and elegiac, a celebration of memory and a lament for a way of life that would soon exist only in history books. For more of Duncan MacIntyre's spellbinding poetry, and to find out more about the era in which he lived, these resources may be of interest. We're back! Back to fire up the mountain of scorching. Spoiler warning though, there ain't going to be much scorching going on today. It's midwinter now and conditions are about as challenging as they come. I'm shortly going to encounter some of the deepest, near impassable snowdrifts I've ever seen in Scotland. It seems Beinn Dòrain's southern slopes hoard the white stuff like it's going out of fashion. Well, here we are back in Beinn Dòrain, and man, it's cold. I've let this mass expedition up here to their own devices for a little bit, because I'm getting a bit sick of them talking behind me in really loud voices. As you can see up there, Beinn Dòrain looking majestic. Beinn Dòrain boasts some hard climbing routes, many up there on Beinn Dòrain's impressive crags. These are the most technical pitches in the Southern Highlands, with such appealing names as Scorpion, The Sting, and Antichrist. Yeah, I'll stick to the path, thanks. It certainly looks like a face to be reckoned with, especially in winter conditions. Possibly a little bit of sunshine, but yeah, it's going to be bitingly cold at the top. Well, here we are about 100 metres shy of the summit plateau, and as you can see, the snow here is pretty substantial. It has made the walk up here, I say walk in inverted commas, because it's been pretty much a snow climb through metre deep snow, and even deeper than that in places. An astonishing amount of snow has built up here. Getting up here has been long, slow and super tiring. Over there on Beinn Dòrain you can make out the mass expedition there, just reaching the North Ridge out of the gully. Good luck to them. It looks pretty windy over there as well. Now I've basically been alone on the hill, coming up here, taking the left turn at the Bialach, and basically just following this south ridge up, because the summer summit path over Beinn makes the snow up here look like a picnic. The snow is just unbelievably deep there in that corrie, and it just makes the summer path completely inaccessible unless you've got a portable snowplow. The snow condition is frankly horrific. You get a nice crispy bit, and then it goes down about, you know, a half a metre to a metre. You take another step and it goes down even deeper. Absolutely exhausting. The summit is up there somewhere. Now we've got to find a way up there in time to get back before dark. Onward. The final step up to the summit plateau is guarded by this fantastic grotto, a section of exposed rock strata that would have Dr. James Hutton in quite a tiz. There you are. If that's not nature's artistry at its finest, I don't know what is. It's the summit of Beinn Dòrain. This is the west top up here, and this is the tundra-like final third that I've been crossing. Man, this place really gives you a feel of being in a pristine wilderness, really. No sign of human habitation whatsoever, which is just how we like it. So here we are, about to hit the west top. Really getting a feel of entering the Highlands here. Getting some fine sunshine over there on the Cruachan Massif. And a rather doom-laden framing of the great flatness that we're going to get. welcome to wild Rannoch Moor. Known from ancient times as the Great Flatness, Rannoch Moor is a 150 square mile expanse of wilderness separating the central and southern highlands. Its conspicuously level landscape gives a spectacular feeling of elevation from the summits of its surrounding mountains. Stretching from Bridge of Orchy north to Loch Treig, east to Pitlochry and Loch Ericht, and the Black Mount Hills and Glencoe to the west, it's considered one of the few remaining natural wildernesses in Europe. The area is composed of blanket peat bog, lochans, rivers and rocky outcrops, a challenging environment for life to flourish, which nevertheless bears a unique collection of flora and fauna. A wealth of plants, insect, bird and animal life can be seen here, from curlews and Scots pine to wildcats and red deer. Rannoch Moor's underlying peat deposits posed major difficulties to builders of roads and railways, which over time would literally be swallowed by the bog. When the famous West Highland Railway line was built across Rannoch Moor, its builders had to float nearly 23 miles, or 37 kilometres, of tracks on a mattress of tree roots, brushwood and thousands of tons of earth and ashes, just to get it to stay in the same place. Carrura railway station, the UK's highest and one of its most remote, being 16 kilometres from the nearest public road, is located on this section of the line at 408 metres. Despite its apparent desolation, Rannoch Moor teems with wildlife. Roe deer are often seen on the low ground in the early morning and at dusk. They live in the wooded areas and scrubland. There are Scottish wildcats on Rannoch Moor, but you'll be extremely lucky if you see one as, like me, they are wary of humans. One of my favourite animals, the pine marten, lives in the woods, and mink, the scourge of waterfowl, live around the lochs. There are also owls, otters, foxes, badgers, beavers, capercaillie and hedgehogs, as well as ptarmigan, both brown and mountain hares, and red and black grouse. On the open hillsides live the red deer, disappearing in summer up into the remoter areas and returning in autumn and winter. Sadly, red deer have to be culled in autumn due to overpopulation. If only the same thing could be done with motorhome owners. Birds of prey are common on the moor, and you may see golden eagles, merlin, buzzards, ospreys, peregrines, hobbies, sparrowhawks, hen harriers, and kestrels. Whew, no rest for the birdwatchers. The charmingly named Black Wood of Rannoch is a remnant of the Scots pine forests, an ancient mixed woodland that once covered much of the Highlands, and don't let its name put you off, it's absolutely gorgeous. It lies on the south bank of Loch Rannoch, and rare red squirrels can often be seen scurrying around its ancient pines. Loch Rannoch is of international importance for its special wildlife and biodiversity. Rannoch Moor's nutrient-poor ecosystem gains some enrichment from the small run of salmon which end their lives here, providing marine nutrients for other organisms. The wilderness of Rannoch Moor has featured in fiction, perhaps most famously in Robert Louis Stevenson's novel Kidnapped, but also, in a work of equal cultural significance, DuckTales, as Scrooge McDuck's familial home. According to the Looney Tunes artist Don Rosa, Castle McDuck, the ancestral home of the Clan McDuck, is located in Dismal Downs, somewhere on Rannoch Moor, which despite scouring every iteration of the Ordnance Survey map I still can't find. Disclaimer, other grossly stereotypical representations of Scottish culture are also available. For more on Rannoch Moor and its unique ecology, links to further resources are provided in this video's description. Thanks so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. To see new episodes as soon as they drop, hit that bell icon to get notifications. Next time we venture west to Argyll to raid the lost Alp of Loch Fyne, Beinn Dòrain. Until then, enjoy your adventures.